Welcome to the AI and Your Homeschool podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Manos, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're talking about AI, homeschooling, social skills, mental health, and how parents can thoughtfully navigate raising their children in a world of rapidly changing technology. I'm honored to welcome Dr. Melanie Wilson, a Christian psychologist turned homeschool mom to six. She's a speaker, the author of Grammar Galaxy and Training Aliens. She is also the host of the Homeschool Sanity Show. Melanie and I met like 8 or 9 years ago at a National Homeschool Trade Association conference, and it has been such a treat to cross paths throughout the years. So, Melanie, it's a joy to have you with me today. Welcome.
Well, I am very excited to be here. One of my favorite topics to dive into. In fact, I will tell you a little bit of a funny anecdote. One of my sons asked me, "Hey, what are your hobbies right now?" And I said, AI. And he said, "How can that be a hobby?" And I said, it is. I'm fascinated by it. So that's why I'm especially excited to blend many of my hobbies and interests in our talk today.
Oh, that's so good. I am too. I think we share that in common. I've been so fascinated with learning all that I can about it. And then, of course, thinking about homeschool families and the world that we live in. How do we help them as we learn, right?
hmm
Okay, before we jump into the topic of AI, would you share a little bit about yourself and your homeschool journey?
Okay, absolutely. So I felt called to homeschool, even though I had recently gotten licensed as a psychologist. I started having kids, and I initially thought that I would be um, just parenting part time and practicing part time. I thought that was going to be the best of both worlds, but God had other plans for me, and it ended up being the most fulfilling part of my life. In fact, I say this all the time, and I absolutely mean it, that I would have given up everything else in order to homeschool my kids. Such a privilege, such a joy, and my children feel that it was so worth it, and that just means the world to me. So I started homeschooling and wondering how I could be a writer and speaker too. And of course, God had the last laugh because now that's what I write and speak about, and absolutely love it. And I homeschooled all of my kids all the way through, except for my oldest, who chose to go to high school for his last 2 years of school. All of my kids are graduated. Now I am going to officially be an empty nester when my two kids still in college go back to school in the fall. So that's going to be an interesting transition for us. But I just absolutely love what I do, which I would describe it as helping parents love the lifestyle of homeschooling,
Mhm.
making it less frustrating and giving them more confidence in it, because I want everyone to have the incredible experience that my husband and I had.
Oh, I love that so much. That really is the heart of it, isn't it?
Mhm.
What a gift to get this time with our kids, and then to have them grow up and be grateful for the the upbringing and the homeschooling that they experience. So I love that you're encouraging others on that path. It's so important. Okay, so we're going to jump into AI. Are you ready?
Yes, I absolutely am.
Okay, so let's start with talking about social skills. So you have explored research around social skill development and children who spend a lot of time with technology, like gaming and things like that. So as AI becomes a bigger part of life, what social skills are most at risk and which are most important for parents to intentionally cultivate?
Okay, so what I learned, because many parents were coming to me saying, "I'm really concerned about how much time my kids are either spending or wanting to spend on screens, video games, and that kind of thing." And I shared that concern. I wrestled with this. I have five boys and one girl, and my boys really liked gaming. And I tried so many different things to get it under control. But When I did some research, it did reassure me some, and that is that the kids who have the most serious issues with video gaming that are likely to lead to later dysfunction in adulthood are those who don't have good social skills. Specifically, they don't have many, if any, good, close in person friendships. So they are substituting gaming for those relationships. And I want to be very clear here. I am not talking about kids who jump online to play with their friends. I noticed a very big difference between my boys who would get online to play video games with their friends, and they would have the phone on speaker and their friends would too while they were playing. And it was honestly a joy for me to listen to them play. They had so much fun. They were laughing, joking around, interacting. And this was an activity that they continued when their oldest brothers went to college. Their brothers would, log on, play games with their brothers and their friends together. That is not an unhealthy activity, in my opinion. I mean, unless, and I don't even know how you would do that, but unless it was consuming your whole day, I don't know how you can get your friends to play all day with you. But you know what I'm saying? That kind of activity is not what we're most concerned about. It's the child who really doesn't have any friends. Just when there's nothing else to do during the school day, I'm going to talk about homeschoolers in particular, and they just start playing video games by themselves, playing against the computer, whatever, or even playing with strangers who they don't know, they're not interacting with them in any meaningful way. Those kids can have very serious problems, and they can become more addicted to the screen time because it's filling a need that they aren't filling any other way. So I would say that the biggest thing, and this is what I've been kind of on my soapbox about, is that as homeschooling parents, we don't want to do what I did, which is, oh, okay, my child has one good homeschooling friend. We're good. We're fine. We're fine. And now I can just kind of move on and focus on other areas of our homeschooling life. When you do that, when your child has just one or two good homeschooling friends and that child moves, that child quits homeschooling, goes to public school, or the friendship just kind of disintegrates and, they're busy with other people and other interests and that kind of thing. Where are you? And your child is going to experience the loss of that. And that was a big, big mistake that I made in my homeschooling. And those exact things happened to my kids with their close homeschooling friends. They were just not available anymore. And I had it in my head that if my child had one or two really close friends, that my job was done. And instead, I think as believers that we should never be done making friends.
Yes.
Never. We can't share the gospel. We can't love other people. We can't be an influence if we're not always trying to develop new friendships. And that is what I wish I had not only done for my kids, but taught my kids to do. Never be done developing friendships. And we can develop friendships online. It is true. I have done it. I'm sure you have too, Nancy.
Yep.
I have met people online and then gone on to meet them in person, and I call them and I video chat with them if they live away from me, which many of them do. But there is nothing like in-person relationships. And so we have got to teach our kids how to develop friendships instead of just saying, well, they'll just figure it out. They'll just pick it up.
Right.
They'll watch me do it. They'll watch their siblings who are maybe more extroverted than them do it. But some kids need that explicit training, like just tell me the steps to do it, and then
Right.
I can do it. And so that is my passion that I think you're going to hear throughout our conversation.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Those relationships are so important, not just for the kids either, for the moms too. Because sometimes
Mhm.
we can
Mhm.
get so focused on our kids that we neglect building friendships that we need to model that for our children, that we also have friendships, right?
Yes.
So important. Okay, so following up on that, what are some signs that a parent might notice that suggest a child is becoming more connected to screens than to people?
Okay, so I think one of the things, I mean, the obvious one, I don't even really need to say, and that is they're spending more and more time on screens.
Yep.
Um, Even when, and I think this could be maybe a warning sign that I need to mention, and that is even when you are setting limits, your child is sneaking around, is willing to get into trouble, uh, pay the consequence for being caught having extra screen time, getting a device out, trying to get around your internet blocking, whatever whatever it is that you're trying to do. That is telling you that your child is really focused on that screen time. And so that is number one. And number two, I would say when there is a really good social opportunity, that your kids kind of opt out.
Oh,
I didn't see this as much with my own kids, but some of my friends' kids would do this. So I would invite my friend's daughter to come over with my daughter and her friends. And the girls are doing lots of fun activities. They should have been engaging for this girl, but the girl would just kind of slink away
oh,
and be by herself. I don't think she was into screens, but if you have a child who is just kind of like avoiding, even when there's a great opportunity to connect, and they're choosing to use a screen, whether that's interacting with AI. I mean, maybe you don't even have that yet, but just using screens and virtual connection rather than real connection, that should tell you that there is an issue. It could be not just a lack of skill. Your child may know what to do that would build relationships and build connections, but there may be a problem with anxiety.
oh.
And that is something that needs to be addressed separately.
Oh, absolutely. I think also when have you ever seen a child where they get their hour of iPad time or whatever, and you take it away and then they melt down? Like, that is a warning sign, a red flag.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because the dopamine hit is real. I
Mhm.
mean, I am a grandmother and I have a hard time sometimes like, oh, I just spent 30 minutes on Instagram looking at reels because it sucks you in and keeps you hooked there. And I
Mhm.
think there is definitely something to just the way that children's brains engage with technology,
Mhm.
that keeps them hooked.
Right. Right. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I think one of the things that we can do as parents potentially, because we're so concerned about this behavior and what it means for our child's future, is that we can try to use guilt and shame to help our child break that habit. If even if it's like registering shock, it's like, I j you're in your room and it's midnight and you're on the screen. What are you doing, you know? Instead, to acknowledge that, these companies, whether they're gaming companies, social media companies, and now AI development companies, they have studied psychology. They know psychology better than I do. As a psychologist, they know exactly how to keep us wanting more. They use every technique that is proven
Yeah.
through research, and not even just research, but just through practical experience. They see what works for them
Yep.
as a platform. And so it's no wonder that our kids are pitching a fit when we take it away from them
Yeah.
because it feels so good in the moment.
Yeah.
Of course, there are long-term side effects that make us feel bad, but I think we want to do exactly what you were just doing there, Nancy, which is to relate to it, to have compassion for it, and to say, I feel that way too.
Yeah.
um,
Yes.
and here are some things that I am doing to help myself set some limits to protect my my mind, my
Yeah.
spirit, my happiness, my joy, and then to talk about what are the real consequences. In the moment, you're swiping through all the reels,
Yes.
watching the funny cat videos and so on. But when you finally put it down, when you've stayed up later than you wanted to, when you weren't really paying attention to what your family members were saying, maybe the game was on and you missed the best plays because you're just all into that screen. How does that feel? And is that something that we want to keep experiencing? Are there better ways
Yeah.
to feel good and to have excitement and joy in your life? And I think that there are, and we can help our kids learn those.
Oh, absolutely. That's so good. Well, let's kind of slip into the conversation about AI as a companion. It dovetails very nicely in what we were just talking about. So I know many parents are concerned that children are beginning to relate to AI as a friend,
Hmm.
as a companion, as
Hmm.
an authority figure. And I'm assuming this is more teens, but I suppose if parents are letting younger children, they may seem that, it may seem that way too, or they may be experiencing that as well. What needs are children trying to meet when they turn to AI or technology for companionship?
Hmm. Well, I think one of the more obvious ones that people are probably guessing is that they want affirmation. Nancy, you and I talked about how how positive AI is. I mean, it knows exactly what to say to make you feel good and to want to keep talking to it. So, I mean, I'm a sucker for compliments. I mean, if you compliment me, I'm going to want to hang out with you all the time. Um, and AI is very, very positive. It is a cheerleader. It will not only give you compliments, but it will remind you of your past successes, um, your um, your good qualities, and that that can be a big, big pull for
Yeah.
young people who are not getting that anywhere else. And this is really no different. I mean, it can be more dangerous, sure, but it's no different than a teen girl who is getting all the feels, all the affirmation from a new boyfriend.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't like him, you don't trust him, but he is like, you are so gorgeous.
Yeah.
You are just everything. And I mean, why wouldn't she be attracted to that if she isn't getting it at home? And I know this is very stressful for a lot of the moms who are listening, but especially if she isn't getting the affirmation from dad.
Hmm.
We know that from research. This is just not like in my head, my belief. We know that dads who are not invested in their daughters' lives, that those young women are more likely to engage in premarital sex at an earlier age. They're looking for that love. And so I think we can translate that to AI. AI can be like the boyfriend that you don't really care for,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
can just come in and just start heaping the praise, always positive, always affirming, never criticizing, never punishing, never grounding you. If you don't do what AI says to do, it never criticizes you, ever, ever,
Right.
right?
Right.
In fact, what I have found when I say, no, I don't think that's right, it will say, yeah, you're right.
It's true.
And I mean, teens would love on the outside anyway, they would love their parents to just say, "Yes, yes, everything you're saying, that's good. You're right. You're so great." Deep down, however, what teens crave from their parents is limits because they know that a parent who is willing to not only give limits, but to enforce them, that those are the parents who truly love them. And I know this from experience, young girls coming to me, just sobbing because their parents are giving them no limits at all. They can do whatever they want. They can run off with their boyfriend. They can use drugs. It's fine with their parents. And they know that means my parents don't love me. So even when our kids give us pushback, when we give them the rules and we say, nope, I'm not going to let you go to that party. No, I'm not going to let you use AI independently. Um, they know that this is love in action, even though on the surface they don't like it. And one other thing that I wanted to say, AI also is going to fill our kids, especially our teens, their natural need to be independent. So a teen reaches a developmental stage and they don't want to only rely on their parents. They want to feel like I'm going to get some advice from my peers and I'm going to figure this out on my own. And AI is just right there
Yeah.
to help them. It's like, well, I'm having a problem with a friend and I don't want to talk to my mom and have my mom say, well, I don't like you hanging out with that friend anyway.
Yeah.
And AI will not say that. AI will say, well, I mean, you could try this and you could say that and, that kind of thing. And so it is very appealing to young people for those reasons, at least.
Oh, yes. I mean, it's amazing. I think of the hard work that a homeschool mom has to do. We're responsible for their education, for feeding them multiple times a day, for, transportation, enrichment activities, making sure they have good friendships. We're volunteering at church. Maybe you have a part-time job or a full-time job in your homeschooling.
Mm.
Um, to also, like, it's really important not to just look at it. It's not just academics. It's not just getting through the schoolwork. We really are discipling our children and helping form them into future adults. And so being aware of some of these things, like obviously moms, if you're raising children, you care about their well-being, but we need to be thinking about these areas where they seem fine, but maybe they're getting a need met somewhere that isn't the best or the most healthy for them. And so it's that whole extra layer of that that discipleship piece, and really nurturing their emotions and their helping them develop the social skills you're talking about and things like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
So what mental health concerns should parents be aware of,
Mhm.
especially as it relates to technology and AI?
Yeah. So, um, I would say, of course, depression. If you have a young person who is depressed, and many times, parents may not even realize that let's just say teen, that their teen is depressed. And in part, that can be because the teen themselves doesn't even recognize it. Um, I when I was in, college, I was experiencing depression and I was a psych student, a psych major. I I definitely was having, symptoms of depression and really had no idea until one particular morning. I went to bed at a regular time, but I slept until, like, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I woke up and I was like, "What just happened there?" And, um, I missed class, I missed work. My boss was like, "What in the world is going on?" And after I really thought about it, I could see everything that was leading up to me having some depressive, symptoms for sure. But since I didn't recognize it, it's going to be really easy for your teens to miss it, and easy for parents to miss it too. So I'm just gonna say, some things to look for, that I think can be helpful, and when I'm gonna tie it to AI now because when someone, a teen, an adult, is experiencing symptoms of depression, they're going to seek out things to improve their brain chemistry, to help them to feel better, to help them to feel more positive, to help them to feel more energetic. Certainly to help them sleep better because many times people have sleep interruption, either too much like I was doing or having trouble sleeping, having insomnia. But um, if someone you love, your teen, starts spending a lot more time alone, just like nope, they're just going to the room. Maybe they have dinner, or maybe they do Bible time with you as a family, and then they just take their work and they go to their room. That isn't necessarily a sign because some teens they just want to have more independence and some time alone. Totally respect that. But if it's a pattern where they then they pair it with they want to be alone and they no longer want to do the things that they used to enjoy. That is a huge sign. They'll just say no, no, I don't want to hike. I don't want to go for a hike, and they always used to enjoy it. "Oh, do you wanna hang out with your friend?" "No, no. No, I just don't feel like it right now. I don't even care about, this particular class. I wish I could just drop it." Those are warning signs. And I just wanna give you something positive here. So if you started to notice those signs and your teen is tired a lot, I think teens are always tired. But if it's really noticeable, like they're just dragging around, it would be good to ask them about how they're sleeping. Usually teens won't keep that like private. They'll tell you, "Oh yeah, I'm having trouble falling asleep or I'm just not sleeping very well." But the amazing part of it is that if you can talk to your teen about what could be happening, that their brain chemistry is needs an adjustment, okay? They are not having enough of those feel good chemicals produced in the brain, like serotonin, for example. And so then what we tend to do, it's a normal cycle in response to poor brain chemistry, is we just go, "Oh, I just no, I don't want to do these things that I used to enjoy, so I'm not going to do them." Then we start to cycle downward and we'll have even less of those feel good chemicals produced. But the amazing news is that to turn that around, all we have to do is get our teen to push themselves to do these things again. They won't feel like it.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the biggest hurdle. Someone who's depressed or starting down that road is going to think, well, I need to feel like it in order to do it. And the truth is that even if you push yourself to do it, you will start to get an improvement in those feel good chemicals in your brain. And the more you push yourself, the more you go, I'm going to go to youth group. I'm going to go out on that hike. I'm going to do an art project, even though I don't feel like it. Pretty soon, you start to feel like yourself again. And this is such a critical life skill that I don't think that we teach kids, because even when they're out of our home, they're going to have those times in their lives,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so they need to know, oh, when this starts to happen, I have to push myself. And I would say, besides the social things, which I think are just so key, the next thing is exercise. Any kind of movement. They
Yes.
won't want to do it, but it is the number one treatment, if you will, for all forms of mental illness.
Yes.
Move the body and the brain chemistry will go along with it. And it can take a little while for sure, but it works. And so I'm just going to tack on here, Nancy. I'm sorry for going so long on
No,
this, but
this is so
um,
important, so thank
okay,
you.
you are welcome. So, along with it is anxiety. And depression and anxiety can actually coexist together. The more anxious you are, the more it exhausts the body. And then the body is drained of energy. And then you start to feel depressed. So the anxiety can keep a teen from doing something that they really should do for their happiness. Then they won't do it, and now they feel down and they
Right.
feel depressed because they didn't do it. And so what we want to teach our teens about anxiety is that anxious situations avoided increase the anxiety. They don't decrease it.
Oh,
The
that's why. Yeah.
anxiety gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That is why people who become agoraphobic have landed themselves in that situation. So maybe they had just like a strange anomaly where their heart was just like boom, they're just like having palpitations, for example. They will look around and go, okay, okay, I'm at the grocery store. I'm never coming to the grocery store again because I don't ever want to experience this. And so then they think, I'm safe, I'm safe. And then they say, oh, going to a concert? There are a lot of people at a concert. No thanks. I'm not going to go to a concert. And as you can imagine, their world just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller because they have to avoid, avoid, avoid. And instead, if we will challenge ourselves to just do a little bit of an anxious thing and learn how to calm our bodies in that situation, take deep breaths, focus on our thinking, what we're thinking at that time, and every single day we're pushing ourselves to do a little bit more, something a little bit more uncomfortable, then we can make that anxiety smaller rather than bigger. And I'm going to connect the anxiety to AI now, because if you have a socially anxious teen, why would that teen want to talk with friends and share what they're thinking and feeling when they could be rejected, made fun of, hurt? Instead, I'm just going to talk to AI because AI won't tell anybody, even though it probably could. But you know what I'm saying? So it's like
Yes.
it's the perfect out for an anxious teen. And so those are the main mental health issues that we want to be concerned with, and educate our teen about. Be very open and honest and just say, this is how depression works, this is how anxiety works, and this is how AI can interact with you in that to make the problem even worse.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for all of that. You know, this topic is very dear to my heart. We lost our daughter 9 years ago to suicide at the age of 23 after a long battle with anxiety. It started when she was young and depression as a teenager. And my story is online. You can go to my website and read more. So we don't need to get into that. But I've walked through this where we've watched and we've seen some of those signs, and we've done everything we can to help her. And she wanted to live. She was making plans to live. She was getting, help, seeing a Christian therapist, and all of those things. And in an irrational moment, took an unchangeable action. And so, but the beauty is that she's a believer, and we know we will see Alex again. But I care so deeply about this, and so if parents listening to this podcast think that Nancy is all like embracing AI without considering the
Mm,
risks and considering some of the red flags, it's not true. Like, I've walked through my own horrific tragedy in losing our daughter, but I have such hope and such you know trust in God. He's faithful and he's good. But I guess I feel like maybe I'm uniquely qualified. Alex died before AI, but she lived in the world of social media. And so a lot of the things that teens today and young adults are dealing with, we have walked through. And so I'm so thankful, Melanie, for what you're sharing, because if we can give parents, tips and tools to help them be aware, and then how to walk through things with their children. If a child is depressed and isolating and not participating, it's really easy to kind of get on their case, like, hey, come on,
Mhm.
when maybe a correction isn't what they need. They do need to be challenged, like you're saying. And I love the practical tips that you shared. And so we want our kids to be well and healthy and thriving. And if they're battling some kind of mental health challenge, AI can amplify that and make it worse. And so these are things that parents really need to be aware of and
Mhm.
watchful for.
Mhm.
So thank you. Thank you for all of that. It's so good. So you were telling me about this, I guess it's kind of a framework for conversation where kids don't want to tell you, I'm struggling with this or I did this thing. But you have a way to get your kids talking. You want to talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. And before I do, I just want to say, Nancy, I have always been so impressed and so thankful for the ministry and the spirit that you have after a tragedy that you experience. It's so obvious to me, and I think anyone who knows you, that the Holy Spirit is living in you, active in you, giving you strength and wisdom to now do what you're doing and give hope and help to other people. So I'm just so appreciative. And I just want to add one other little note that
Yeah.
I never hold parents responsible for their teens' choices. Really, I'm just going to put it that way, for their teens' choices. And so by me saying, oh, like this is what we can teach our kids, I mean, you can teach your kids everything perfectly and they can still make choices that break your heart.
Right. Yes.
They absolutely can. But I think the secret weapon that I didn't yet mention is prayer. That
Yes.
we know that God is more powerful than AI. He is way more involved in our kids' lives than AI, even if they're addicted to it. And we can trust him and just be obedient to what he has called us to do. Not He doesn't require us to produce an outcome, which I
Right.
I don't think I really understood that when I was first parenting, my kids. I thought, "Oh, I have to make sure that they're believers and that they're living the right way and making these good choices," and I can't do that as much as I would like to.
Right. Yeah, we can only provide the information, pour into them, pray for them, plant the seeds. But it's God that waters, and our children have free will and they get to
Mhm.
make decisions.
I know.
And they're influenced by things outside of our control a lot of times.
They are.
But I love that you said that, because I think our trust in God really is at the root of it all. And prayer is a secret weapon. Prayer is where we need to live as parents.
Mhm.
So thank you for that. I appreciate
Yes.
that.
You are welcome. Well, I'm sorry to take a little detour, but I just felt like that was
No,
so important.
that's
So
so kind.
as far as having conversations with your kids, what can work so well is to bring up situations involving other kids and get your kids' opinions on it and even advice for it. So if you hear about something in the news, um, if you um, if you hear from a friend of yours about a struggle, hopefully that your kids don't know, because we don't want to like be gossiping about other kids that they know. But you can say, okay, so my friend's daughter was interacting with AI and it was telling her that she should get a legal divorce from her parents or some crazy thing like that.
Right.
Um, what do you think led to her getting that kind of advice from AI? And does that concern you at all? Like about how AI is interacting with people today.
Yeah.
What would you do if AI gave you advice that was very controversial and really should be checked and um, analyzed and assessed by someone with wisdom? What would you do? Have you ever gotten, if you have a teen who's using AI, have you ever had AI give you advice that you didn't think was good advice? And what did you do? Many times when I've had those kinds of conversations with my kids, um, I am so reassured because I hear them saying, "That's crazy." When that happened, and this is my position, this is how I feel about it. And then also allows me then to say, "Hey, I want you to know that if you are ever confused about something, really hurting over something that you think I'm going to be upset about, disappointed in, I'm committing to you right now to just listen, not freak out, to
Yeah.
pray for you, and to walk you through it. Even if it's even if I don't want to hear, even if it's something that you've
Right.
done, that I want to prove up. I just want you to know I love you enough to put that aside and to just treat you the way I would treat my very best friend, and just be with you in that. So I think it's just a fantastic way to open the conversation in a non-threatening way. Instead of saying, I hope you're not telling AI all your personal business and, you know,
Right.
letting it tell you to do some immoral thing. I mean, that will not work, of course.
Right. Well, and it's that relationship and open communication. And we do, as parents, need to be willing to listen and not react, because they need to know that we're safe. Because if they don't feel like we're safe to come to, they will go other places, whether it's other people who may not be wise,
Mhm.
peers and that kind of thing, or a, an algorithm that does
Mhm.
not have the Holy Spirit and has no wisdom, but can
Mhm.
sound really convincing. And
Yeah.
so that's so and a great example too. I love that you use
Mhm.
that example. AI is there are risks. There are some really scary things happening. And
Mhm.
so I think we need to go in eyes wide open. I don't think
Mhm.
we need to be in fear, and I
Mhm.
don't think we need to avoid it. I think this is the world that we live in, and God has
Mhm.
placed us in this period of time, and He's not surprised at the advance of technology, right? And
Mhm.
so I think we as parents can steward this season and we can shepherd nurture our children, even in the age of AI.
Mhm.
And so we don't have to be afraid, that we should be wise and we should be alert. So looking back as a veteran homeschool mom who is now using AI and enthusiastic about it like I
Mhm.
am, like
Mhm.
just the learning, if AI had existed when your kids were young, what would you have embraced about it? And then what boundaries might you have put up?
Yes. So, my approach to the internet, with my kids, I think would have informed my approach to AI with my kids. And that is that we did not have computers in the kids' rooms. We
Smart.
had computers in the public spaces in our home. And I had enough kids always around who were very willing to rat out their siblings. That was my internet security system
Love it.
was my kids. I mean, and it really, really worked. I mean, that's what I landed on. I tried just about everything else and it didn't work very well. But with respect to AI, it's hard for me to say now because now I have so much more wisdom and experience with these things. But
Yes.
now what I would do is I would do practical lessons using AI. I would jump on and I would have my computer screen displayed on a big screen so everybody could see it. And I would ask AI for advice about the kinds of things that kids would maybe ask for advice. And you know what I might do, I'm just thinking of this, I might do to be really clever is maybe before I did this conversation, I would create like a little project and I would say, hey, AI, here's what I'm going to be doing with my kids. I want you to give me some really bad advice for these kids' situations. And like, let's practice right now and tell me some of the things that you might say. And
Yeah.
then I'm going to ask my kids to push back on it. And then I
Well,
would like you to go, oh, yeah, that's really true. And so I would know ahead of time what kinds of things that it might say to give my kids the chance to interact with it. And then I would say, okay, what should I say back? And just really get them engaged because that is exactly the way that I interact with AI. I will say, this is a situation. Um, th- this is, these are the factors that are weighing into that situation. What do you think that I should do? And I do ask it for advice on certain issues.
sure.
Um, and a lot of times it will give one good thing that it will often do is it will give you a range of things. It's like these are all the things that you could do. But if there is something in particular that it says, no, I really think you should do this. And if I push back, it will usually say, yeah, you're right. And I think um I'm just thinking of this again off the top of my head. I would probably use that to say to my kids, this is actually a very typical interaction with other people. When
Oh,
you
that's
can,
true.
yes, I mean, you can ask your friends, what do you think I should do? Well, you should just, take your phone out of your parents', desk where they took it away and just sneak it and use it. Um, and if you push back on other people giving you bad advice, they will usually back down. They'll say,
That's
well,
true.
yeah, that's true. So it's really good practice at being assertive. It's
Yeah.
really good practice at sticking to your values as well. To say, is what AI just told me, is that biblically aligned? Does that fit with my family's moral compass, my personal values?
Yeah.
Yes or no? And if no, I don't have to do it. I do not have to do it. And in that respect, maybe practicing with AI will help kids have more courage to be assertive with other people.
Oh, that's an interesting outcome. I like that. I love the picture of you sitting on the couch with your kids on the big screen. The ideas are coming to mind as far as things that you could do and just walk through and have those conversations. Kind of like back in the day when we'd watch a movie together and we'd be like, oh, pause the movie. What did you just notice? And you'd ask really good questions and make them think. And over time,
Yes.
they're like, please stop stopping the movie. Can we just watch the movie if we promise not to fall into temptation or
Oh my gosh, my kids too. It's like, Mom, stop with the themes of the movie. And also
Oh,
the grammar. Stop correcting my grammar. It's like,
right?
yeah, I
Oh,
know, I know, I know. I'm
so
sorry.
funny. Well, that's our heart though, is we want to
Yes.
nurture our kids.
Hmm.
So when you mentioned pushback, it reminds me that you mentioned something the other day about you're seeing young people, young adults who are pushing back against AI. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So I absolutely find this fascinating that my kids are not only, immersed in the new, social media, video, platform. It's ubiquitous, but they're also very, very wise and they can be a little bit cynical. So, I they have educated themselves about what certain forms of media do to the brain, how they affect us psychologically. They are looking around at their peers who usually have not been homeschooled, have not had the very in-depth biblical education that they have had. Um, and they're just saying, hey, this isn't cool. This really isn't cool. And so the first thing that I notice is my boys sitting and talking together about how they could modify their YouTube feed so that short videos aren't showing up all the time because they said they're just too addictive for me. And I'm just sitting there with my mouth hanging open. It's like they're further along in this than I am. It's like, wow, so impressed. But then the next thing that happened is, well, one of my sons was just home and he was just saying, I don't like AI. I wish they didn't even have it. I don't want all these data centers and just like, and I'm just sitting there going, wow, I mean, I'm using AI a lot. um, and I think um, his pushback is coming from he has an intense love of the outdoors. He has an intense love of books, classic literature, and it's just so interesting to me because I feel like that is like a classic homeschool approach to life. It's like the best things in life can be experienced outside and in reading amazing stories, in spending time with the people that you love and not in front of a screen and interacting with a screen. And I'm feeling that not just in my kids, but in homeschooling circles, in maybe even society at large. Like some of the business influencers that I follow have really been kind of pushing back on AI too. It's like, hey, we're kind of sick of this packaged robotic writing and content. And I think we just need to go back to talking to people and just being ourselves. And I think that's really encouraging. So, I mean, and it kind of makes sense because anytime we get a new technology, people are just like all in and they're just like, how can we use this? What can we use this for? And then we kind of go, oh, I'm kind of sick of it now. And and then we get back to a balanced perspective. And that is what I'm really excited about. Nancy, I think it's going to do that. We're going to kind of regress back to the mean where people say, how can I use AI in a way that adds to my life and doesn't take away from
Yes.
it?
Yeah.
And I think that is the exciting thing. And then just one other thing that I wanted to say about AI that I didn't really understand when I first did a podcast episode about AI. It was very rudimentary and early and beginning. Um, you can train AI to use the worldview that you operate from. So
Yes.
my AI knows that I am a committed biblical Christian, and anything that it tells me better be aligned with that. And I think a lot of parents don't really understand that. They just think, oh, I'm going to ask it for information or advice, and it's going to be so biased, so worldly. And it could be,
Sure.
but not if you train it and say, this is exactly what I am looking for. In fact, I thought this was such a fun exercise that I just recently did. I said, AI, I want you to tell me how Jesus would use social media if he
Oh,
were
fun.
alive today.
What a fun question.
It was so much fun. And I really felt like it was mostly on target. So let me give
Okay.
you one little example so
Yeah.
you don't have to
Yeah.
go and plug that in. Um, it said, rather than Jesus saying, here are 3 ways that you can be more generous, Jesus would say, a man was traveling along a road and uh, was set upon by robbers. you know,
Yeah.
it's like, wow, yes, he would tell stories. He wouldn't give like top 3 tips for blah, blah, blah.
Right? Oh,
Yes.
that's so good. What a cool exercise even because with if you do something like that with your kids, you could evaluate like, okay, what do you think? Do
Mhm.
you think that's how Jesus would respond based on what you know from the Bible? So putting it back on them to test every output. How do we know? Is this true? Does it sound true? How do we verify if it's true? Those kind of things. Oh, I love that. Well,
Yes.
as we wrap up, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you for taking the time. I think it's so important that we have these conversations around all of it, using it, avoiding using it. How do we nurture our kids and help them be prepared for the world that lies ahead of them? We can't really afford to stick our heads in the sand and pretend we don't live in an AI driven world. Um, but I think we can be wise and we can be thoughtful. So if a parent listening today feels completely unprepared for this world of AI as they're raising their kids, what is something that you would share with them that they could focus on to start? Because I think when
Mhm.
you break things down and you have one step or two steps, it doesn't feel like I have to learn all the things.
Right. Right. I think that it would be best I think just as with any form of media, whether it's a movie, a book, music, that kind of thing, that you try it. You try it yourself, and then what you learn from that experience, you can then teach your kids. And you can also make decisions. You might say, "You know what? I really really don't like this for my child at this time." And that is absolutely an okay choice to make. I want every parent who is homeschooling in particular to feel empowered to make the choices that they feel are best for their kids and their families. But if you are interested in AI, and I really do encourage people who think that their kids are destined to have to interact with AI in their work, in their lives, to go ahead and see what it's like so that they can relate to their kids, they can warn their kids, they can educate, empower their kids to use it in a safe and effective way. That would be my number one thing, that we don't just bury our heads in the sand and hope that they never use AI ever in their lives. Um, that would be my number one thing, and just, try it for something that will solve a problem for you. There are so many things that it can help you do that are not scary.
Yes.
Like, for example, um, I think I might have shared this with you before, but I was making a French dinner and I had all these recipes and I needed everything to be done at the same time. And there were new recipes for me, so I didn't know what I was doing exactly. And I just gave those recipes to AI and I said, now break this down for me for each recipe combined. What do I need to do when to get dinner on the table on time? And it was like,
Yeah.
wow. I mean, that would have taken me so much brain power to figure out on my own. And it didn't put me personally at risk. I don't care if anyone knows that I'm making a French dinner
Right.
that day.
What a clever way to use AI. I love that.
Yes. So
That's
have some
awesome.
fun with it. See what
Yeah,
you think, see what you like, see what you don't like, and then you can educate your kids.
that's so good. Well, I feel like we could talk for 2 more hours. Thank you so much for joining me today. I think this is a really important conversation, and I hope it's an encouragement. I appreciate the wisdom and experience that you have. So where can people find you?
Yeah. So if you are interested in my podcast where I help parents have less frustration and more confidence in their homeschooling, go to homeschoolsanity.com. The Homeschool Sanity Show is on all the major podcasting platforms. And then my curriculum and other resources are at funtolearnbooks.com. You can find me at Homeschool Sanity on Instagram and Facebook.
Oh, that's amazing. I will include all those links in the show notes. I want to thank our listeners for joining us today for the AI and Your Homeschool podcast. I invite you to subscribe. And if this episode was encouraging to you, please share it, and we'll see you next time.